And we are, as a people, inherently and historically
Wake up!
opposed to secret societies, the secret oaths, and the secret proceedings.
The show that asks questions about why we don't ask questions.
What the hell is going on?
This is Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park.
And welcome back to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. These are Conspiracy Queries. I am Alan Park. Sometimes I say that differently. Sometimes I reverse them, try to shake it up a little bit. But this is the show, and we are in one of the closing weeks of summer, and it's very hot outside, and things are heating up around the world. All kinds of nonsense going on. Miley Cyrus was gyrating in front of Robin Thicke, which happens to be, I think, a disastrous projection of the Bill Hicks, late great comedian, had a bit about. He had a new show called Let's Hunt and Kill Billy Ray Cyrus, and that was all predicated on Billy Ray Cyrus having that song, Achy Breaky Heart, which was inexplicably and undeservedly a huge international hit. And Bill Hicks thought that, there should be no such thing as a Billy Ray Cyrus. And he also made fun of, Bill Hicks did, the constant ongoing situation with pop music. And he would decry Debbie Gibson and make fun of her music and people like her. And now we have a situation where the spawn of Billy Ray Cyrus is at the center of a firestorm of disapproval. Now, I agree that it's just sexual activity that she was portraying once again on the VMAs, but I found it rather weak. Seems like she's just making up for what's not really there. And the once supposedly wholesome Disney Hannah Montana is now twerking. I was told to twerk before, but it was always phrased as get back to work. So I don't think that's the real way they were meaning to do it when they speak about Miley Cyrus. They were also talking about Robin Thicke, who is the son of an 80s sitcom star, Alan Thicke. And those types of sitcoms were also decried by Bill Hicks. And so this is like a full confluence now, I think, for Hicks, who must be turning in his grave when he sees the daughter of Billy Ray Cyrus gyrating against the son of Alan Thicke. He's got to be having a tough time with that one in the afterlife. And speaking of the afterlife, I imagine that a lot of people will soon be experiencing the afterlife, if there is such a thing, if America's plans for Syria come to pass. Apparently now we are being told that Syria is dangerous enough and using chemical weapons against, you shouldn't be using chemical weapons at all, really. So America has taken it upon themselves to spend the money and the time to put out the fires in California that are threatening that state. No, they're not doing that at all. No, they don't have the money to do that. Actually, they don't have the money to do that. They don't have the money to school themselves. They don't have the money to take care of things that need to be taken care of, such as infrastructure. But somehow there will be, based on supposedly official information, a reason to go into Syria and have another war. Now, I remember Wesley Clark, the general, had a little chat about how over the next several years, the United States was going to go into Syria and Iran and various other nations, Iraq, etc., and Yemen, and they are doing this. They are actually doing this, and I don't know who's being fooled by, put your hands up if you're being fooled by America's cry for a desperate need to get into Syria with military intervention. Just put your hand up in the air, and just so we can see you driving along listening to the show, which one of you people have been sucked in to the story. Remember when Colin Powell was sitting before the panel showing the aluminum tubes, which I believe were, I think it was some eavesdropping. he might have taken off of his Dick Cheney's underground bunker and brought it in and claimed it to be part of a weapons program that Iraq had. And then subsequently that they knew where the weapons were in Iraq. They knew that Iraq had the weapons. And then, of course, they didn't. Why do we let them get away with that? How do we let them get away with that? Are questions that constantly percolate in my mind. How we constantly get fooled by these lies. The media is complicit. That is without question. Not this media, not this channel, perhaps, but NBC, ABC, they're all owned by military interests. They're all owned by people that profit from war. But I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. The reason why they do these things, these horrible things that will involve death and many deaths of innocents, all based around a lie. Is that the America that you know? Is that the America that you learn about or have learned about in school? Because that's not the America that I want to believe. As Obama would say, that's not who we are, while he does all those things that are who they are. Bit of a paradox there for Obama. This isn't who we are in the middle of doing, like Julia Childs is cooking. Or Martha Stewart is making doilies saying, this is not who we are. No, that is exactly who you are. You're making a basket with fruit in it for autumn. That's exactly who you are. Well, I think it goes a little bit deeper than that. And so I decided that I would need to speak with someone that I know and have known for a long time to help me out with the motivation as to why America does these horrible things. And so I'm going to bring him on right now. My guest today is Nelson Thall. Nelson is a media scientist. He is a former McLuhan archivist of the McLuhan Center for Global Communications in Ross, California. He is a former director of the Torstar newspaper group. And he is with me today in studio and has much to say about why America does these things. Nelson, how are you today?
Very good. It's nice being here, Alan. This is a cozy studio.
It is cozy.
Yeah.
Yeah. So listen, I brought you on because a lot of crazy things happen in the States, and it just doesn't seem like it's the character that they portray on the world stage. It's not the character that they are imbued with as little children, pledging allegiance to the flag. We know this is a nonsense run-up heading into Syria. We've seen it before with Iraq. They seem to be trying to put that together for Iran, and they're just such heavy-handed influence, and I find it to be evil. And I don't understand where or how that could be the case, whether it's Bush or whether it's Obama. There seems to be some kind of template of influence that doesn't come from what the voters want. And I know that you have some insight into why that is. And it involves the Waffen SS from World War II. Can you expand on that theme a little bit for me?
Well, first of all, thanks. It's been great being here. It's midnight. The owners of the system have gone to sleep so we can come out and play. And, we stand on the shoulders of giants. John F. Kennedy made his secret society speech. He said that it was a monolithic, ruthless conspiracy, unquote. That was at an American Newspaper Publishers Association, codename ANDPA. Back in the 60s, he talked about the secret societies and he talked about how the enemy of the Republic of the United States were the secret societies. And so, Jim Garrison and Penn Jones and Mae Brussel and Sherman Skolnick were all deputized to follow what was going on in the Kennedy assassination. I was fortunate enough that I got to meet Penn Jones and work closely with Penn. And through him, I was able to get involved in starting to research and look at what was going on and watch the detectives that were analyzing and looking into the JFK assassination.
Well, speaking of that, now Penn Jones was the gentleman that you actually tell us about. You actually obtained the Zapruder film.
Whenever Penn would come to Toronto, he stayed with me at my house, and we were very close. He was deputized by Garrison, to start the investigation. He was the publisher of the Midlothian newspaper, and he knew Ruby, and he knew Dallas.
Jack Ruby.
He knew the underworld of Dallas because he was the publisher of the Midlothian News, a newspaper which is like Markham is to Toronto.
Now, you actually went to
Would go
the
to
United
Dallas
States,
and stay with him in the
and you
70s.
stayed at his place, and
Yeah.
you from him obtained the Zapruder film.
Right.
Now, what year was that?
Garrison. Well, I got it from him in 1972. And remember, in 1969 was when they smeared him during the Clay Shaw trial. And then he was an anathema. Anybody could get to Garrison because he was an anathema in the United States. They labeled him basically a wife beater and everything and lied about him on national TV. And yet he was reelected, remember, as district attorney of New Orleans. So I went to see him, got in to see him through Penn Jones. And Penn was the one who got Garrison back into the case. And that is shown in the movie. And it was Penn Jones who was the only consultant to Stone on the film JFK. So I had a real connection down the road with the JFK film because through Penn. And through Penn I met Mae Brussel, who continued and Sherman Skolnick.
And then you brought the Zapruder film. This is for anybody who doesn't know this. This is the movie that apparently shows John F. Kennedy's head getting blown up.
It's a smoking gun.
You brought this back with you in your luggage? Where was it?
Well, I flew down to Dallas and I had the ticket. I had a ticket, a return ticket, and it was on the same airplane. All they did was when the plane got to everybody got out, they vacuumed it, and then an hour or two later they took off and back to Toronto. And Penn Jones met me at the airport with the film in a copy of Quigley's Tragedy and Hope that was cut out.
Carol Quigley's massive book, Tragedy and Hope.
Was decimated. And the copy put in the hole in the middle of the book.
This is like an 1,100-page book. It's like a phone book almost.
And this is a Super 8 film.
Yeah.
And he handed it to me because in those days you could go right to the gate. There was no security.
Sure.
So he went right to the gate. I got off the arm of the finger.
So now because of you, I have to take my shoes off whenever I go to New York. Right? Fantastic.
And brought it back. And that's a whole other story. But so Kennedy gave us, and remember, McLuhan talked about the secret societies, and he showed how the arts and sciences, he quoted, the arts and sciences, he said, are now in the pockets of these secret societies, and he named them Rosicrucianism, Popery, Freemasonry, and Gnosticism. So McLuhan, we're standing on the shoulders of giants here, top worldwide academic experts. We're not starting from the ground.
Okay. Well, let's just jump back in time a little bit to address what I was speaking of earlier. And the
let's
seemingly
talk about
evil director.
Syria, for example.
Okay, let's go there.
Let's go right to the news.
We'll go to the news?
Let's go right to the top story.
I was going to go to the news several years ago. But, all right, Syria is the
big news.
Thing. I was saying, so what's going on with that?
Let's remember a couple of things. Syria, to this day, is still manipulated and controlled out of Whitehall by the British Crown. Okay?
And when you say the British Crown, you mean?
British Crown. Well, who's the head of state of Canada?
The Queen.
Queen of what? Queen of Canada.
The Queen of Canada.
Right.
The Queen of England.
Queen of Canada
the Queen of
is the British Crown. She sits on the British Crown.
And they're running the
British
Syrian
Crown is
show.
on her head. She happens to be the occupant of the throne. The throne was there long before. The British Crown was there long before the Windsors or the Stuarts or the others or the Hanovers.
Right. Okay.
So the British Crown has always had Syria as a colony to this day. Proof? Want proof?
Absolutely.
When Mahar Arar, do you remember Mahar Arar?
Yes, I do. Yes.
Who had software knowledge of the software, the PTEC software.
This is a Canadian software
Mahar
engineer.
Arar was on his way to New York City to talk to a major magazine about how he had developed PTEC software, which was the software which was used to distract the air traffic control. Okay.
For, I'm guessing, 9/11?
Right.
Okay.
He was going to spill the beans on 9/11 and expose the Bush junta.
How they tied up the air traffic control
to
be able to pull that off. How they used this
software. That was part of the big plan that day, right? They had red, green war games. They had all sorts of, all levels they were running this operation.
But he was
intercepted.
renditioned.
He was renditioned to where?
Syria.
And they not only Syria, remember, they wanted to hide that he got to Syria. So they flew him to Lebanon by military plane and took him by car to Syria. So it would be hard to realize that he went to Syria. They wanted to use Lebanon as a cover.
Well,
Okay?
I've done a lot of road trips as a comic, but I can't imagine going from Lebanon to Syria.
So if you were Bush, you were my-hop, lie-hop, made it happen on purpose, let it happen on purpose. You were one of the two Bushes, right?
Okay.
Would you let a man who had all this dirt on you and your operation, would you send him to your enemy or your friend?
Yeah, I always
Where would
wondered
you send
what
him,
the hell
Alan?
he was doing in
Would you
Syria.
send him, give that info to your enemies or your friend?
Right.
Right. So Syria is not just a rogue country. It's a manipulation of the British Foreign Office.
And we also have now. This is
hello.
While we're on the topic of.
Do we have to go any further? That solves Syria. Go watch what happens in Syria.
We do have a little bit more of a show to cover.
Yeah, well, we'll go into the other stuff.
But just to touch on the Syria thing as well, it seems as though the people who are getting assistance on the official level from the United States government are Al Qaeda.
Alan, do you remember during the Kuwait War, we were on radio, and it came out afterwards. It was even published in the major newspapers that all afterwards, after the Kuwait War, it came out that all during the Kuwait War, the British were sending nuclear fuel to Kuwait and to Iraq
During that
war,
1991
against Saddam.
Right.
Yeah, they were working with Saddam, and it's like, I'm not saying that. That came out in the major press.
Right. Okay, but the United States is apparently helping the rebels against Assad of Syria, and the rebels against Assad of Syria are Al Qaeda. Are they not?
No, what's happened is the people who manipulate Syria are trying to get it so that they can create a new war in order to prop up their system. The British Crown is at war with the Euros. I mean, Nigel Farage, the British parliamentarian in Brussels, Von Rumpi admitted that they planted the bomb on his plane.
On whose plane?
On Nigel Farage's plane. Nigel Farage's plane was almost killed. He's a British
he's a
parliamentarian in
Brussels.
He's been speaking against Von Rumpi. So we've got this battle going on between the EU, which is separate from the individual nations of Europe.
It's a whole other entity.
A whole other entity. It's Brussels, not Paris, not London.
Right.
But Brussels is now admittedly at war because Von Rumpi admitted that. Remember, Nigel Farage spoke against them for many years. Tried to stop the EU and desecrate
from forming it.
He said all sorts of nasty things about Von Rumpi. Then his plane got crashed. He nearly got killed. And afterwards, Von Rumpi admitted that they were the ones who tried to get rid of him.
Okay, so speaking of Europe...
So there's lots going on that's not recorded and published in the press here, is it? Right.
Okay, so... Speaking of Europe, let's go back in time to before the Syrian situation we're discussing. Let's go back to World War II. So America is brought in. They help to finish off the war, and America wins the war, and the war is now over, and the Allies are victorious. Is that really that's what we're led to believe? That's not what you're saying, though?
Churchill said that in wartime, the truth is so precious that she should always be attended by a bodyguard of lies. Hitler said, in wartime, we provide truth with a bodyguard of lies because it is so precious. Tavistock's military psyops war school training line was, quote, in wartime, the truth is so precious we surround it with a bodyguard of lies. The book Hitler Was a British Agent shows that Hitler and Churchill were second cousins. They both attended Tavistock in 1911 as classmates.
This is Adolf Hitler
a wonderful book
and Winston
that will
Churchill.
Help people understand.
Hitler Was a British Agent by Greg Hallett, Hallett. And I don't know if you can you get that on
Probably been
mainstream?
banned.
That's not in Indigo.
No.
That's not in the Chapters bookstore or Barnes & Noble.
I brought Andreas von Bülow, who wrote the book 9/11 and the CIA, on. It was banned in the United States and Canada. I brought him on Cloak and Dagger. And
that was a radio show Nelson used to have on a different network called Cloak and Dagger Radio. It was on through much of the 2000s. And he had Klaus von Bülow.
Andreas von Bülow. Not Klaus. No relation. Andreas von Bülow, who headed German intelligence.
Right.
It was and he wrote the book CIA 9/11, which was written in Germany, using his sources, proving that the Bush went to were behind 9/11.
Right.
Remember the
now once again, give us von Bülow's position. He was the minister,
head of German intelligence,
minister
in charge of intelligence agencies,
and he said that it was.
He wrote a book, CIA 9/11. Which was not translated into English. I wonder why.
Well, someone has a gig because
I
like
brought
to
him
read
on
that
my
book.
show, and that was it.
And what happened? Now you'd been on the air for several years.
It was a successful show, year and a half, and it made the BBMs.
Oh, that's a rating system for those of you that don't know. That's a rating system of how it's like the Nielsen's for radio.
You made it if you hit the BBMs because then they can charge their clients.
Right.
Money for the ads.
And so you were doing
show.
well, is what you're saying.
Doing
You're being
terrifically well
listened to. It was a 3-hour show.
It was written up on Global in the Globe magazine. Where were you when Cloak and Dagger was killed by Mike Posner?
Right, and then you had on von Bülow, who spilled the beans in an official. So at this point, though, you'd already spoken to a lot of people on the show about 9/11. People with theories, people with ideas and notions, and you're still on the air, no problem.
Right.
As soon as you bring on this intelligence chief.
And we knew we'd be fired.
It's over.
We 50-50. We figured we'd be fired.
Now, I love this. Tell me why you brought him on anyway, knowing you would be fired or thinking you would probably be fired. Why did you bring him on then?
Well, we're not agents of influence and we're not agent provocateurs. We're students of media and journalists seeking the truth to be exposed.
So you had to go there.
Had to go there.
Yeah.
And we studied. I studied a lot of counter-propaganda science as a media scientist. So we learned how to neutralize the effect of the propaganda.
Okay, now excuse me. I think I have to sneeze. Von Bolschwing.
Yes.
Von Bolschwing. That's a funny name. Now tell me about von Bolschwing.
Dave Emery is a great journalist, anti-fascist researcher who's been following the Bormann Brotherhood since they took over and won.
The Bormann Brotherhood, in other words, Martin Bormann of Nazi fame.
Right. This book is terrific. Nazi in Exile, Martin Bormann by
Paul Manning.
Great book. And it will details how the Nazis in exile basically took over control of.
If you're Googling this, kids, Bormann is spelled Bormann.
Took over after 45. Remember, the Iwo Jima monument was the monument to show America that it had surrendered.
Okay, now that is a matter of perception because the Iwo Jima monument is in.
That's the catch-22. That's the little hidden joke.
So you've got the 4 soldiers.
I don't remember how many it is,
3 or
but
4 soldiers,
they're lowering the flag.
And everyone
America
believes
surrendered.
that they're planting the flag and raising it, and it's on its way up. But actually, they're actually tearing it down.
He took over. The proof is this. You know, Alan, if two sides are fighting and we have the Allies Intelligence Agency, the OSS, the Office of Strategic Services, it has its spy networks in Russia and in Germany, all over the world, right?
The
valuable
OSS.
defense mechanism.
That was in the 40s.
Valuable nest of system of network of spies.
Now, the OSS, let me just say, the OSS was the system of the spy network that was in the United States, of the United States.
It was the intelligence agency of the Allies.
But it was
British
headquartered in America. And
right.
then Americans win the war.
Well, it was an offshoot of British SOE and British Special Operations and the Secret Service and Her Majesty's Secret Service.
But still an Allied operation.
Yeah, remember, it's an Allied operation. It's not only that, it's a British Crown operation.
But then a couple of years after the war, they're not there anymore, the OSS. Well, what happened? How did they lose their intelligence grip? Yeah,
exactly. Remember, the Queen's 2 sisters are married to the Hesses. The Hesses created and started the SS. James Bond is famous because he was sent in by the Queen Mother to get her letters to Hitler out before the Allies went in.
All right. So now, let's go back to the war. Germany surrenders.
Yeah, let's go back to the war.
Operation Paperclip happens, right?
But the war started long before 1939. The war was planned long in advance. and was an operation Hitler was implanted within Germany to go to war with Russia, because the British establishment believed that the way to protect themselves and keep Britain on top was to keep Europe fighting and with conflict, keep control through commotion.
Okay, I'm speaking with Nelson Thall. He is a media scientist. He has many other credits to his name, but I think we should stick with media scientist right now. And he's very well learned and opinionated upon the German war and the Germans in the war. Actually, you say that the Germans lost the war, but the Waffen SS and some of the elements of the Nazi Party,
the British Crown with the Rockefellers, certainly won it.
Were then absorbed into America and South America with Operation Paperclip. And then what happened? Who were some of the key players?
Well, remember, Kurt Waldheim, Hitler's master general, took over the UN, became Secretary General of the UN. Kurt Waldheim.
Yeah, that was incredible, wasn't it?
At Nuremberg, there was one of Hitler's generals was sentenced to be executed. His name was Walter Dornberger, and he was protected by the Rat Line, the Vatican Rat Line, taken to America. And the British sent a letter, the British Foreign Office, there was a letter on file from the British Foreign Office to the American State Department telling them that they better not leave him alive. They better carry out the Nuremberg execution order, which they never did. He became vice president of Bell Helicopters.
Wow.
And who was his underling in Germany? Werner von Braun.
And Werner von Braun.
And he appointed von Braun to be head of NASA. Same thing, right? Nazi. There's Nazi NASA.
So there must have been some kind of superstructure in order to. Here's a guy convicted at Nuremberg, recommended to die by.
Not recommended.
Absolutely.
Execution
the order is on, but somehow he manages to not only escape that, but to become a prominent player,
vice president of Bell Helicopters, and then of course that's interesting because for two reasons. One, he chooses von Braun, who was also Hitler's general. Remember, Hitler's generals all took over. I mean, Reinhard Gehlen, there's that book. Read that. What's the name of that?
This book is called Network, The Truth About General Gehlen and His Spying by Heinz Hohn and Hermann Zolling.
Yeah, heavily documented. These books are all academic, heavily documented records, historical records. Hitler was a British agent, all these books. So you've got Gehlen, Hitler's general, takes over the CIA. But isn't it interesting? If we won, how come our intelligence agency got closed down, the OSS? Hey, that's a mistake. If we won, we close those guys down. We want to get rid of their defense network. Instead, our entire spy defense network, they got rid of.
Disappears.
So who won the war? If we win the war, Alan, we don't close down our OSS. We shut down their intelligence agencies and get rid of their spy network.
But instead, some of the key players were cherry-picked and brought over.
They backed up through our OSS spy network, the Waffen SS, and killed them all over the period of. That's why they went to war in Korea and of course, the Vietnam War.
Now, how about in the Vietnam War? How was Bell Helicopter doing profit margin-wise?
Exactly. You know that the image of the Vietnam War, the iconic image, rear-view image,
is the helicopter.
Is the Bell the Huey helicopter.
Sure.
It became part of our language. Huey helicopter was made by Bell. So you got Dornberger at Bell. He chooses von Braun. And, of course, we get down to the JFK assassination through him because his right-hand man at Bell Helicopters is Michael Payne. And Michael and Ruth Payne were safe housing the Oswalds and got them the job in Dallas.
But they were just innocent friends.
Exactly. It's coincidence.
Sure.
Totally coincidence that Oswald's safe handler works for Dornberger. Right.
Now, Nelson, about the Kennedy assassination, because we're on a line for that. So now the OSS is gone. It's been replaced by the CIA, which is heavily influenced and perpetrated with these Nazi. Right. And that, in your mind,
SS even.
Waffen SS, and that hasn't really changed today.
No,
and that is the recipe, that is the impetus for all of this really ugly, negative stuff of interventionism.
And they're partnered with the Queen of Canada, with the British Crown.
And how are they partnered?
Well, as I said, there's a whole history, book after book. There's tons of proof of the connection between. I mean, first of all, I.G. Farben
industrial company
was a company that was owned half by the Nazis and half by the Rockefellers. It was a German chemical company owned by the Rockefellers and the Nazis, and they both developed the poison Zyklon B. Came from IG Farben, was sold by IG Farben to the Germans.
Now, IG Farben...
And who was the salesman who sold for IG Farben?
I'm guessing the Pope?
Tero Wojtyla.
Well, not this Pope. The other
what
Pope.
A man,
Not
eh?
that Pope, the other Pope.
Yeah.
Right.
Tero Wojtyla.
He was the salesman.
Yeah,
All right. Now, let's go back into the past now with the Queen. Doesn't she have a British, a German background?
The House of Hanover.
Saxe-Gothenburg.
Yeah. It's basically the Hanover, House of Hanover.
The German transplantation. Unbelievable.
Yeah. And of course, nobody hides the fact that the Queen, and so Charles's aunt and uncle are founders of the SS, Waffen SS.
All right, now let's leave that for a minute.
So
when Kennedy was shot, well, prior to Kennedy being shot, he spoke of, and I have him in the intro link of my show every week, speaking of the vast conspiracy. Now, here's a sitting president, Kennedy, speaking of a vast conspiracy.
A vast monolithic
conspiracy.
Yeah.
How did he expect to get away with that? I mean, what were people thinking? Take us back to the day he had that speech. What were people thinking when the president
should get it
said
on
that?
the internet.
They absolutely
and listen
should.
To
if Barack Obama sat down right now and said, there is a vast conspiracy, a monolithic
conspiracy.
Like, what would people think? What were they thinking back in the day when Kennedy said this? Were they going, oh, he's probably right. There must be some heavy involvement here. We should be on our toes to be on guard against.
That's a good question, because Hillary Clinton said her husband was the victim of a right-wing conspiracy, and everybody ignored that as well.
Yeah, they laughed it off.
So, look, we're just lonely on the ground in the wilderness journalists, in where the media is heavily censored. There's no truth in them, really much truth in the media, very, very little. When it's out there, it's intermixed. You've got to sit back and watch for it and study propaganda science and see and understand that when they come out on stage shaking hands, It means backstage they're enemies. And on stage enemies are backstage friends. So
you're talking about heads of state and G20 and that kind of thing.
Everything. I think that with regard to, for instance, Syria, we're trying to save our system, our American system. The Queen wants to save her derivatives. The way to do it is to keep wars going in Syria. These things are all manufactured. Just like it came out today that Bobby Riggs, the tennis player, had debts, gambling debts. So he threw the match to Billie Jean King.
Oh,
it was all rigged. Riggs had it rigged.
Riggs had it rigged.
So we all become our names.
Right. So von Bolschwing. Got to go back to that.
Bush, von Bolschwing, and Bormann. Dave Emery. There's a great, if people want to know more, look up Dave Emery, firelist.com, I think it is.
Now, I realize a lot of people might have a great deal of difficulty swallowing this conversation that Nelson and I are having, but it's all documented. If you look back at the history of the Bush family itself,
none of this is our opinion. These are newspaper articles, and this is all testimony.
Now, tell us about Prescott Bush, Trading with the Enemies Act. It was his actions and profiteering from the Nazi machine that pretty much provided the Bush family fortune, and they've gone on to have so much undue influence over American politics.
Archivists like myself were shocked when we went into the Library of Congress and discovered that in 1942, the United States government had seized Prescott Bush's Brown Harriman Bank under the Trading with the Enemy Act. And within it, in order to, before the court, put the proof, they showed that over 90% of Nazi Germany's pig iron, heavy steel, tanks, all the big stuff that you need in the field to fight a war, were all financed by Brown Harriman Bank. They seized that bank. And Jacob Chaikin was the lawyer for the U.S. government. And, of course, his son wrote the book, famous book, Treason in America by Anton Chaikin.
Anton Chaikin.
Yeah.
Right. Now, he was also, when I say he, I mean Prescott Bush, he was charged and found guilty 3 times under the Trading with the Enemy Act.
Yeah.
And
they took his shares from him.
So I find this family fascinating because no one really ever wants to talk about Prescott Bush anymore, even though it wasn't one time. One time would be bad enough. 3 times and the profiteering. Then you've got Bush Sr., George Daddy Bush, who's still incredibly with us. I guess the vampire blood transfusions are effective than I'd want to believe. But he is also in Dallas on the day that Kennedy
he was
was killed.
He was the CIA captain in charge of the exercise. Herbert Walker Bush, George Herbert Walker Bush 41.
Now this is unverified as far as I know, but
there's lots of pictures.
No, that's verified.
Testimony.
But what I'm about to say is unverified. But I have heard the famous question that so many people are asked are, do you remember where you were when you heard Kennedy got shot? And of course, for me, my generation, it's more like, do you remember where you were when John Lennon was shot? But yes, you always have that. It just locks your brain down. If you're doing laundry or if you're eating a bag of chips, at the beach, you'll know where you were. And apparently, George Herbert Walker Bush said he couldn't remember where he was on the day.
Yeah.
That is amazing. And not only that, he was in Dallas. How could you get away with that nonsense?
Yeah.
And no one really questions him on that. No one really takes him to task.
Well, and of course, today, look, the British system and the British Crown knows that they've got a leaky boat and it's leaking water. And the only way is to help them prop up. They're trying to prop up their system. And of course, what the people who are against Syria, I guess, in Canada should remember, hey, we're trying to prop up our system, our dollar. And we want to keep writing checks to the Receiver General of Canada, not to Brussels.
Right, not to be involved in the...
We don't have to write checks to Brussels, so maybe the Syrian war, people in the rearview mirror may think it's a good thing. Who knows?
So there hasn't been, as we say, this is all documented stuff we're pulling from historical, absolutely, unrefuted books and heavy-duty research.
Yeah.
These are not easy reads by any imagination. There was a woman that you introduced me to recently who is no longer with us, Mae Brussel, and she wrote an article for Larry Flint of Hustler magazine fame. Larry Flint put out a publication called The Rebel.
Rebel magazine.
And Larry Flint, always being a rebel and against a lot of the nonsense in American politics, had this short-lived magazine. The very first issue was there contained an article by Mae Brussel regarding JFK and the Nazis and the JFK
Nazi
assassination.
connection to the JFK assassination by Mae Brussel.
Let's nutshell that. What is the Nazi connection to the JFK assassination?
Well, there's just so many, but we already mentioned Dornberger.
Right.
Okay. Dornberger is a big connection through the Dornberger network and through Galen and her book, her article. By the way, let's remember, this is not new information. This is very, very old and tested information. This came out in the 80s.
Yeah, 88 or something.
Yeah, this came out in the 80s. And it was because of Mae Brussel's article, writing that, sending it to Larry, that he decided to create Rebel Magazine. He created it for her.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
And of course, she carried on the Penn Jones mantle. Investigating the anti-fascist movements.
And she was a radio show host?
She was an anti-fascist. I mean, not the anti-fascist movements, the fascist movements.
Right. She was a radio show host
and
for
radio
several
show
years.
host in Carmel, California.
And did she primarily speak about this kind of thing, or
she
all
weekly
over the map?
Had a radio show just on the Kennedy assassination.
Just on the Kennedy assassination.
Yeah, just on the Kennedy assassination.
So we're not going to cover it all today, then.
I don't think so. People should look up Mae Brussel. Google in. Today it's a great world. Just Google in these people's names and start down the road following on the trail of the assassins, as Jim Garrison told us to do.
So the Kennedy assassination, there was so much involvement, though. Like, okay, so let's go with it was heavily influenced by the Nazis, but there was also mob or mafia involvement. There was also military intelligence involvement. There seems like so many different wheels of influence.
It was real simple. Garrison said it. There's two people. Clay Shaw was all Praetorian Guard, Rome, Vatican. Mm-hmm. Clay Shaw was charged. The man charged with it was Vatican agent. This is November. Remember the 5th of November.
Sure, the V for Vendetta.
Remember the 5th of November, right?
Yeah.
With the Fox tried to blow up the British Parliament.
Guy Fawkes Day in England.
Exactly, in England to this day. Guy Fawkes was a Vatican agent trying to blow up the British Parliament. There's a whole celebration, a day in Britain given to that. And
given to the fact that he was caught.
He was not only caught, that he remember, England was fighting. England had broken away from Rome. We had Martin Luther nail the 95 Theses on the wall of the Wittenberg Church, created the Reformation, Henry VIII, and you had the breakaway from Rome, right? And you had Rome. Then you had Henry VIII start the Church of England, and Rome wanted to get back control of the Protestant religion. So they tried to blow up the British Parliament. That's what's called Guy Fawkes Day. People in England know that.
So when Anonymous and Occupy wear the mask of Guy Fawkes, they're pretty much misrepresenting themselves.
They're the good guys. They're the bad guys taking the good guy's image.
Yeah.
Stealing the good guy's image for themselves.
I wonder how many of them know that.
Fooling the people again with propaganda.
So now we're at the Kennedy assassination.
So basically, you've got two teams. You've got Nazis. You've got Rome and you've got London. You've got the other person that was named at the Clayshaw trial was Lord Mortimer Bloomfield, Lewis Mortimer Bloomfield of British SOE. He was the two guys charged with Bloomfield and Shaw. And
eventually, everybody kind of forgets about all of that.
Everybody forgets about that.
And they still believe that it was Lee Harvey Oswald singularly doing the entire... Now, this is Lee Harvey Oswald, as I think that's his name, but at one point he went to... where did he went to Australia?
No, which one?
No, Lee Harvey
Oswald. Double? Which...
The
real Oswald?
Actually,
the real Oswald lived in on Borden Avenue here in Toronto up until 1999, the original real Oswald. The one who was sent to Japan, the British, the one that was sent to Russia, eventually came to Toronto and lived here. The double was the one that faked his death in Dallas.
Okay, so let's go back a little bit. Real Lee Harvey Oswald is living in Dallas, and then originally.
Well, originally, okay.
Was the original Lee Harvey Oswald joined the military?
Yeah,
and was trained as a
top-level spy at the top-level CIA spy school.
And he was able to learn how to use
and he became a radar expert.
Right.
And he knew the times. He was given the times that the U-2 would fly over.
The U-2 plane, spy plane. Would fly at incredible
high
heights.
And fast altitude. Higher and faster than Russian jets could get up to.
And that plane was a surveillance plane of Russia to be able to see what was going on, the USSR.
No, U.S. No, it was a U.S. plane.
It was a U.S. plane, but it was surveilling.
Spying on Russia,
right.
Taking pictures.
And Russia wasn't able to do anything about it because it was too high and too fast.
Exactly.
So then Lee Harvey Oswald
defected and gave that information to the Russians, and they used it to shoot down a U-2 spy plane, which caused the... And, of course, this is all covered in Stone's film. I'm not giving you anything new here. People have seen Stone's film. This is part of the film.
No, but it's important to put it in context because Lee Harvey Oswald then was the guy who was able to provide that information for the Russians.
Becomes the golden-haired boy of the Hawks in the Pentagon.
And then he's living in Minsk.
Right.
In Russia.
Right.
Takes a wife.
And is sent back.
And then is sent back. So at that point...
Is ordered to do the executive action.
Now, is that at that point still the original Lee Harvey Oswald?
Yeah.
So then he gets sent back to the United States to perform the executive action,
and in the
a.k.a. killing...
Right, and in the Warren Commission, the Oswald that left is 2 inches different in height than the Oswald that came back.
Right. But the Oswald that came back
is a double.
Now there's a
From Russia with Love. Ian Fleming called it From Russia with Love. That's why he called it From Russia with Love.
Well, I just want to jump in here and say that a lot of people who want to know about this kind of thing will take the time to read the Warren Commission report, which even in the 60s, Woody Allen was making jokes saying, I'd taken some time off. I decided to put out a nonfiction version of the Warren report. The Warren report was pretty much a paperback book that everyone was able to read exactly what happened with Kennedy. But what they neglect to mention in any kind of with any fanfare is that it is in fact distilled from a 26-volume, and each volume very thick, series of books. It's like having an encyclopedia set on your bookcase. Nelson, you found...
I have my own copy.
You've got your own copy of the entire set.
Yeah.
So what isn't in the final version is what's really important. And
exactly.
You found in book number 18 or something that...
I'm sure that I found in volume 18 of the Warren Report what's called the Lee Harvey Oswald repatriation loan.
Now, repatriation means come back to the country.
It's a contract between Lee Harvey Oswald and the U.S. government saying that they are sending him money and they're going to bring him home. And it's right in the Warren Commission.
And then
Now, of course, this is a man who's defected. Like, this guy should be arrested. Why would you pay? Now, someone could say, well, they were sending him the money because they'd hope that when they got him home, they'd grab him. But they didn't. They didn't grab him.
They didn't. He disappeared.
He was met at the airport by George de Mohrenschildt, who's a Dornberger asset.
Right.
Okay? A high-level Dornberger asset.
And again, Dornberger is
the high-level Nazi convicted at Nuremberg.
Right, who then got off
a general,
and got
Hitler's
to come
general,
and
one
run
of
Bell
Hitler's
helicopters.
senior general in charge of Peenemünde. Hitler's general Walter Dornberger was in charge of the Nazi rocket program for the Nazi Party.
Was sentenced to die.
He was sentenced to die at Nuremberg.
And came back to this. So I'm just throwing back to earlier in the show.
And wound up the VP of Bell Helicopters.
And that's who meets Oswald when he comes back.
No, he doesn't meet Oswald. An associate of his, George de Mohrenschildt, meets him.
Right.
And Michael and Ruth Payne, of course, are in the Warren Commission. They came forward. They were safe housed. They were in Garrison. Stone had them. The actors playing their parts in the film.
So when Oswald got the repatriation loan, this was coming from
the U.S. government to Oswald in Minsk.
And yet when Oswald comes back to the States...
Which he should be arrested because he's a spy who's given up secrets that shot down our planes.
But when he comes back to the States, he's not met by anyone of an official capacity. He's met by this lackey of this former Nazi who's not a former Nazi. He's still operating
big time. Dallas. Yes.
We should remember people were
it's great. We don't
killed in this event.
We never give our opinion here. We never talk our own opinion. We never ever expose our opinion on any of these matters.
I'm just asking questions.
We just go into the archive as archivists and look at the bank statements and follow the money.
The creative director of Stanley Media Incorporated,
1999-2000,
is with me today. Nelson Thall, one of his many feathers in his hat.
Yeah, I work with Stan Lee on the development of Spider-Man and X-Men.
Excellent.
And God Woke. I was the executive producer and still working on God Woke. Hope to get it out one day.
I like Stan Lee. How can you not like Stan Lee?
How can you not like Stan?
Yeah.
Stan would have to do something really, really atrocious for you not to like him.
You have to break bad. All right, so now it's evident that there is so much heavy, ugly Waffen SS Nazi influence in American politics, going back at least as far as the end
UN,
of the second.
too. Come on. So, you don't think the Waffen SS would get Secretary General post of the UN and give it up, do you?
So
Ban Ki-moon,
and so now we have Ban Ki-moon, who
the
is
Moonies.
He is
one of the Moonies. Look up the Moonies.
Good friends of the Bushes as well.
Yeah, more of the psyops and propaganda, the one world religion gangs.
Now, I pointed out on an earlier show that I was very uncomfortable with the fact that when Obama was up against Romney for the presidency, or Clinton is up against Bush, or whatever you're talking about, that's all fine and dandy, the dog and pony show. But meanwhile, what you've really got going on, the underlying superstructure doesn't really change. And so now you're telling me that underlying superstructure is so heavily infused within. It's basically an evil entity. It's taken over by a vampire.
I don't use good and evil as terms. That's too subjective for me and for this type of a show. I I'm just a journalist. I'm just an explorer, a fellow explorer who's looking in the records, who's looking in the archives, who's reading and what's published in the papers and reading what people of significance and with good academic, heavily documented reports have written that are invisible and kept and banned from people here in Canada.
But with
Look,
all
the
the
only
double
reason
dealing
I can do this is because there's people out there who are, for instance, the Prime Minister of Japan has already gone on the floor of the House and admitted that Bush and that 9/11 was an inside job. Well, you haven't heard about that here in Canada, but the Japanese know about that, and the Germans have read von Bülow's book, CIA 9/11. They know a lot about what went on. They knew it was an inside job. The only one who doesn't know are the Americans and the Canadians.
Right.
So there's heavy censorship in this country. Don't think it's not. Look at how they kicked us off the air.
I don't think there isn't any heavy. I know there's heavy censorship. I'm just a little. I'm easier to
Canadians
go into.
Are very naive.
I'm more easily pushed into the subjective zone because when you're talking about some of the evil dealings of the Waffen SS and the Nazis and their subsequent hidden covert influence on American decision making, which results in innocent people dying, I'm okay calling that evil.
And that's fine. That's cool.
You know?
And it's evil. That's fine. That's fine with
you know,
me. But I'll tell you, look at John Lennon. One of his last few songs were a famous song, Back in the U.S., Back in the U.S., Back in the USSR. I mean, poor John Lennon. They shot him because he was going to run for government. He knew what was going on. He was exposing a lot about a lot of the censorship. He was saying the mind control. He was basically saying, guys, if you think the mind control in the Soviet Union's heavy, you should see it back here in the U.S.
Well, there were jokes about that. How Russian people knew they were being subjected to mind control, and American people didn't. They were like, you know, what do you call the difference between it? You know what I mean? They had little jokes like that in Russian society, whereas America they don't have that.
Lennon's last video was called Mind Games, and it was about a Jesuit and Roman ice cream, eating Roman ice cream at an ice cream vendor in Rome. Then he goes into just take a look at his stuff. It's all right there, Alan. These great artists like Lennon have left us codes and messages, but look at Mel Brooks.
Hilarious.
Producers.
Yeah.
Springtime for Hitler. Look at Woody Allen. Hannah and His Sisters and all his other movies, always bringing up and making sure that you see that, well, you know, the SS, the Nazis, they're still alive. They're still on TV all over the place. Remember in Hannah and His Sisters, he has Max von Sydow go, I've been watching TV, same thing. I haven't watched TV for a couple of years. I go back to it, same thing. Nazis, deodorant salesmen.
Yeah.
Wrestlers, right?
So you're saying the constant...
There are great artists out there who are sort of leaving
references
and connect little dots for people to connect.
Right. So how do we then govern ourselves as a people with our own selves? I don't mean as a nation, one nation or another, but if you accept these facts, this influence from, I will call it a dark system, a template that's over what we're led to believe is the great, upstanding, America, Lee Greenwood and all that kind of thing.
Remember,
how do you move on when you know that Obama, who was campaigning on, I'm going to get out of Afghanistan, there are too many wars, now he's going to go into Syria.
In the book of Psalms, in the scriptures, it says that the Lord uses evil to eliminate the wicked.
All right, so myself and the Lord are both okay using
the word
says
evil. The Lord says God uses evil to destroy the wicked. So maybe who knows what's really happening behind the scenes? None of us really know, but it's interesting to follow the records and the what's really going on backstage in the global theater.
That is really what is going on.
Yeah.
You can never really put it all together.
Yeah, it's still, you're looking through a glass darkly. You're not going to see the whole picture, but you're going to get if you get something that you can see the movement, it's out of focus, and if you can see it's not coming near you, you're in good straits.
How do I know it's not coming near me if I'm going to have you on as a guest?
Yeah, the station will be bombed here next time.
All right.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, Nelson, thank you for coming on today. I just wanted to recommend that people look at some of the historical accurate references that you've
study the grammars of the media.
Through the grammars of the media. What is that?
Well, the power of the printed word to shape your awareness has nothing to do with what you print. And TV is a drug, heavy drug. Look at, fluoride was developed by the Nazis to make the mind docile. It was put in the drinking water of North America.
Now, is that...
Who won the war, Alan?
Is that an IG Farben situation?
Absolutely.
So, and I wanted to get into that earlier. We're getting close to the end of the show. But
we'll have to do another show.
Well, you'll come back, won't you?
Yeah, but we can't promo it because they'll be wanting to bomb it or something.
Right. IG Farben was later split into smaller elements.
Standard
but still
Oil.
Ostensibly
Standard
controlled
Oil.
from the top. So Standard Oil, that's the
Standard
Rockefeller.
Oil, Rockefellers, yeah.
So where did it go? That's all petrochemical. That's any kind of plastics.
If you
any
read
kind
Bormann's book, you'll see the Nazi loot. The Bormann Brotherhood bought the drug cartel, the food cartel, Monsanto,
right,
Archer Daniels Midland, etc. Right, the food cartel, the drug cartel, and the oil cartel. Bayer Aspirin, BASF are all part of the Bormann Brotherhood.
And that all came from IG Farben. Now that
not the Nazi gold.
Okay.
Now, IG Farben was just one little.
But who were the people?
Company between the Rockefellers and the Germans.
So which corporate entity was it then that was putting the fluoride into the water?
Here in the United States and Canada?
Well, it originated back in Germany.
The Club of the Isles.
Is that what you're saying?
The Club of the Isles, the Order of the Garter, the Crowned Heads of Europe.
Okay, but in Germany, that's where it started.
Well, not where they didn't put it in the water there. They developed it there during the war, the Nazi scientists.
The fluoride.
And the Battle of the Bulge, a fat man has a bulge, right? The Fat Man bomb was part of the Battle of the Bulge. And with the doomsday weapon, they ordered Truman to surrender. Patton didn't want to surrender because he knew it was, so they told the Americans, San Diego's next. After Hiroshima, Nagasaki, San Diego's next. Otherwise, you surrender. They surrendered.
Who told that
I think
San Diego was next?
Von Ribbentrop, I believe, was the one who told the Americans they'd have to surrender. Otherwise, after Nagasaki, San Diego was next.
So where were these physical bombs?
Using the Messerschmitt jets.
There's Messerschmitt jets were the ones that dropped the bombs.
You can look up Messerschmitt jets. They were flying jets. We didn't have jets during the war. The Allies didn't have the jets. The Nazis had the jets.
Where were we told these jets were leaving from? America. With these bombs on them.
Well, no, the jets left from
a European theater.
Yeah, from a European theater, but look, they weren't going to have a riot, hundreds of millions of people. They kept it quiet. You surrender, it's like a company. It's not a hostile takeover that's public. It's a quiet takeover. It was an invisible takeover.
Right, but I'm saying that most people believe that the Americans made the choice to drop the bomb.
They made up the Enola Gay story.
Right.
Told that the Americans won the war. As Leonard Cohen says, and everybody knows the good guys lost.
But we do have to go. We were with Nelson Thall today. And that is it for Conspiracy Queries. We'll have Nelson on at another time, I'm sure. And in the meantime, ask questions and do a little research. Got some great books for you to go through. I'll have those up on the webpage later. Thanks for listening to Conspiracy Queries with Alan Park. Please offer comments or complaints by emailing conspiracyqueries@gmail.com or on Twitter @con_queries or at our website, conspiracyqueries.com. Thanks for listening.